All right, TS Hill, let's get it. Welcome back to another episode of The Sales Life. I'm your host, Marsh Bice, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what my MO is. Let me tell you what I normally do. There was a time that I always approach things. I have an intense nature about myself. And sometimes I don't always recognize that. And so I will run with something with extreme intensity. And so, for instance, there was a time when I was doing the podcast 7 days a week, The Sales Life. Every single day I was doing the podcast. And initially, when I started the podcast, it was to get the reps in. So I said, I'll do it 5 minutes every single day. Can you do that? Absolutely. That was something that was small enough for me in my mind. That way I could actually run with it. Well, between episodes 400 and 500, I started thinking that, you know what, let me do something wild. And so what I'll do is I'm going to do the podcast 7 days a week. And then after I record the podcast, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go behind and I'm going to go live with it. And then once I'm done going live with it, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it out for all kind of different segments. That way I can share it on all the socials. And then once I'm done with that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it in the form of a blog. That was my thing, 7 days a week. Well, bro, the first week, I was great. But as week 2 started rolling along, I said, you know what would be cool? Let me do this. Let me add 2 more podcasts to the 7 day a week podcast that I'm doing. So I decided I'm going to come out with the Sales Life Junior, which was for basically high school students that needed to have some of the education. And then I said, you know what? I'm in the sales profession. Let me do the Sales Life Sales Edition. All right. So that was the second week. By the third week, dude, I was frazzled. 7 days a week doing all that. And I said, okay, I got to dial this back. I got to adjust. So I went from 7 days a week of the Sales Life to 5 days a week. But I still had 7 podcasts to do because I still had the Sales Life Junior and I had the Sales Life on Sales. By the fourth week, I couldn't do it anymore. But as I was trying to hold on, what ended up happening is my frustration started mounting. My aggravation started, if I only had more time. So then what I started to do is I said, you know what? I'll work out in the evenings. So that way I have more time in the mornings to do the podcast. Well, now it makes the situation even worse because not only do I not feel good about myself, but I also don't feel good about my success as well. And it just made the situation worse and worse and worse until I overcorrected and went from 7 days a week to 1. And I was frustrated and I was pissed off at myself. And I was like, that's when the doubt crept in. So recently I started listening to Rich Cardona's podcast. And I'll put the links in the show notes below. And Rich has a good podcast. It's called The Leadership Locker. And on it, he had mental performance coach Lauren Johnson. And Lauren nailed it perfectly. She said, I would rather you be consistent than intense. Because see, success is an accumulation over time, not overnight. And think about some big grand goal that you've had. And so you had this big grand goal that you're gonna double your. I'm gonna sell 30 this month, or I'm gonna lose 25 pounds, or you know what? I'm gonna do a podcast. And as a matter of fact, I'm not just gonna do a podcast. I'm gonna do a podcast 7 days a week. So some sort of creative. And dude, with noble intentions, you start off with these intense goals. Yet you have the intensity, but you don't have the fuel for the consistency at that level. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to be consistent before any sort of intensity. You got to have the consistency before the intensity. Because what I want you to do is I want you to graduate up so that way you don't free fall down. So here's 3 things I want you to think about today in your sales life. Number 1, be average first. You can't be great until you become average. So you got to be average. You got to build your averages in, your consistency in. And as you build in the consistency, then you can actually raise the bar. Number 2, ask yourself. Now, this is going to be crazy. Ask yourself, what's the least I can do? That's right. What's the least I can do? Meaning that what is the least I can do that does not disrupt anything else of my normal day, what I do? Because many times what we do is we put everything else, like I put my health aside so that way I could get more content out. My health comes before the content. I got to be here to be able to create more. So what's the least I can give that I could hit the consistency, whatever your consistency is? If your consistency is a podcast every week, a video every single week, one time, what's something I can consistently hit? If it's working out 3 days a week, what's the least I can give? Do that. And then as the cement starts to dry on that, and dude, you're banging away 30 days into this. And as that cement, I mean, you can almost do it without even thinking, and you've never missed a step. As the cement starts to dry on that, then you can level up. And what's interesting is, as you level up, your intensity will naturally rise also, because you're a competitor and you're competing with yourself. This is a key goal for you, to do those 3 things, to approach anything not with intensity, approach it first with consistency, and let the intensity graduate up. And if you do that, what this is going to do, you're going to find 2 benefits to this. You're going to find, number 1, that it keeps your doubt at bay. And what I mean by that is many times we, in a way to force a new belief upon ourselves, in a way to, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of being overweight. I'm sick and tired of being broke. Many times what we do is we force that belief, and we push, and we mean well, and we push to extreme intensity. But then once we can't keep that intensity up because we have no fuel for the consistency, you always revert back to normal, to average, to what you've been doing before. And you say, well, I guess it's just not meant for me. If you graduate these things, if you approach everything with consistency before intensity, what you're going to find is it keeps your doubt at bay, because you won't lose your belief system. See, when you try to go to level 100, and you don't really know if you could even do that, because you've compared yourself to the big ballers out there, and you want to do what they do, yet you can't, you have no fuel for it. So if you raise it gradually, then what that's going to do is it's going to maintain, you're earning your belief system as you go along the way. You're earning your consistency as you're going along the way, and you're earning notches of intensity along the way. The second benefit that you're going to find with this also is that even when you get off track, because you're graduating the consistency up, even if you get off track, something goes haywire that day or whatever, something catastrophic pops up, then what you're going to end up finding is that you're able to recalibrate and get back on track easier. Because think about it. If I'm on step 500, okay, let's take the top of the stairs. If I'm at the top of the stairs and I jump all the way to the bottom of the stairs, I'm out. I'm probably going to injure myself. I'm going to be all busted up. But if Monday I was on step number 4, and next Monday or 2 Mondays from now, I'm on step 5, even if step 5 week goes haywire for me, I only take 1 step down. If it's 2 steps down, it's only 2 steps away. And I can quickly earn that back and then go from there. So remember, listen, give Rich's podcast a listen. I'd rather you be consistent than intense. All right. Let's rock out with today. Let's make this happen. Sustainability is the key. Absolutely. Dan, Kenny says, when I started my fitness journey, that is exactly what I did. You sure did. The 30 for 30 is a key thing. Those of you who are watching now on Instagram Live as well, 30 for 30 is super, super key. That is actually the goal that I had when I lost the 70 pounds. What it was mine was 40 for 40. I was going to lose 40 pounds by the time I turned 40. This was in January of 7 years ago, unfortunately. But I've kept it off for 7 years because what I did is I changed my lifestyle along the way. So that was you have to have, Kenny, I'm glad you bring this up. You have to have a beat to your drums. And so your beat has to be something catchy, and it has to be something that's easy. It's not just catchy. It's also got to be easy for you to follow. So there were times that I didn't feel like it. I said 40 for 40. And Kenny, I know Kenny went, how many days did you go, Kenny? It was like 280, or was it over 300 of every single day? He did us 30 for 30 and ended up being almost a solid year. It may have been over a year. I don't know if Kenny's still on or not. It may have been over a year, but that's the thing, man. See, it was the consistency. And then what you're going to find is as you go along the way, you build up that consistency so much that it's easier to, I tell my salespeople all the time, it's easier to keep it going than get it going. Once you get that thing going and I keep it consistent, then the intensity because then what I do is I say, oh, okay, a little bit more, not a lot of bit more also on that. All right, let's rock out. Remember, the greatest sale that you will ever make is a sale you on you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you found value in today's episode, please share it with someone else, man. Someone else needs to hear this. Also, leave me your comments and the takeaways below. Will it 280 days? Yeah, that's what it was. 280 days of 30 walks in 30 days. And every time, that's awesome, Kenny. Every time, man, he raised the bar. Now, here's what was cool, too, is once Kenny decided that was the end of that, what he did is he recalibrated and he said, you know what? I'm going to start again. And it was a new kind of, sometimes you can get that thing that's so consistent for a while. It's kind of like being a team that you're trying to remain undefeated. And the pressure actually works against you, doesn't it, Kenny? And so it starts working against you and you lose some of that naturally built intensity. So what he did is he broke that and he made the conscious decision to go ahead and break it and start over, because what that happens is sometimes that's what we got to do. We got to bust the concrete up. And instead of maintaining this look for everybody else, we say, you know what? I've lost my intensity. I've lost my fire on this thing. I got to start this thing over. And sometimes, that means that you have to tear it down so that way you can build it up. But when you build it up, you're going to build it up way better on that also. Right, Dan? All right, let's rock out. Y'all stay amazing. Stay in the sales life.